Welcome to the Dr. Mary Lauder podcast show, where we explore the messy, magical, and deeply human journey of healing. I'm your host, Dr. Mary Lauder, a board-certified osteopathic physician, an accidental shaman, and a lifelong student of human experience. Together, we're going to talk medicine, wellness, and culture in a way that's grounded, perhaps maybe a bit cheeky, but always from the art. And don't miss Gadgets, Gimmicks, and Gotchas, my reoccurring segment where we lovingly call out the fluff and highlight the stuff that actually works. So grab your favorite brew, coffee, matcha, or that mysteriously green smoothie and settle in. It's time to get this party started with a strong dose of soul medicine. Hello and welcome to the Dr. Mary Lauder podcast. Today, my guest is Laura Bratton, and she has an amazing story of resilience, grit, determination, and gratitude. As a young girl, 9 years old, a very tender age, she began losing her vision. And this was a game changer, obviously, a life-changing game changer, obviously. And she takes us through her story, how it unfolded for her, and the lessons she's learned. She's got a lot of really good things for all of us to hear. So welcome to the conversation and welcome to the podcast. Well, welcome, Laura. We're so glad that you could take some time out of your day and schedule to join us here on the podcast to really share with us your inspiring story of overcoming overcoming really something that none of us would ever want to face, right?
Yes. Thank you for the opportunity and just the gift of being able to share.
Yeah. So start with it. The way your bio reads, it was really at age 9 that things took a turn. But before we get to that, I'd like you to share with me what you recall of your life before age 9. What was your life like when you were young and like that?
If I had to use one word, it would be fearless. I was the outgoing, extroverted kid that was afraid of absolutely nothing. I spent every waking moment outside. The only time I was not outside is when I was sleeping.
Okay.
And I have one older brother who's 5 years older. And I say that because since he's 5 years older, my goal in life as a kid was to keep up with both the boys and girls that were 5 years older than me.
Sure.
So I was always doing the activities I probably shouldn't have been doing 5 years younger.
Right.
But I was making my mom very nervous. But yeah, fearless.
So did you learn to ride your bike early then?
100%. And we had a street that was very hilly. And I thought it was the best thing in the world to go as fast as I could down the hill, no handlebars, hands up in the air.
Love it. I did the same type of thing. Yep. I loved going look, Mom, no-handed, right?
Yep. Watch this. Because all the big kids were doing it.
Right.
So of course, I should be able to do it.
Right.
I always forgot my age. I assumed I was their age.
Yeah. I think, and I imagine that you really developed a lot of your motor skills much, much sooner.
Much sooner. Absolutely. Again, because I just wanted to keep up with them. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, no, I'm not going to crawl and then walk and then run. I'm going to go from nothing to running. Right.
Right.
Like who has time for all this? So yes.
9 is a tender age, isn't it?
Yes.
And there's a lot of things that we know with psychological development, identity, concrete into more abstract, and things that occur with girls around 9 anyway. So I saw this in your story as kind of a critical point, a critical juncture. So describe what happened when you were 9 and how that part of your story unfolded.
The fearless child had an appointment with the pediatric ophthalmologist, just a regular yearly checkup, because my parents had noticed, she's holding books a little bit closer to her face. So my mom just made an appointment. We thought it was going to be routine and going with my fearless life. In that appointment, that's when the doctors looked at me and said, there's a major problem going on with her retinas. We need to refer her to a retina specialist. So that started a summer of doctor's appointments. That daughter's appointments, the end of that summer, I ended up in Emory University in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I received the diagnosis of, not an exact formal diagnosis, but the diagnosis of your daughter has a super rare retinal eye disease. Her vision will decrease, but we can't tell you what rate.
Okay.
As a 9-year-old, yes, I heard that. Yes, I can still remember being in that the doctor's office exam room when they told us that. Yet I couldn't emotionally, mentally process what that meant for my future.
Mm-hmm.
Because just as you perfectly described concrete, in my 9-year-old mind, I could see now.
Right.
So I was always going to see, right? Like,
Right.
why would life be any different?
Right.
The emotional component didn't come until I was a teenager and started losing a significant amount of sight.
Okay. What age was that?
So that was the very end of 8th grade. And then all of it was 9th grade. And then by the time I graduated from high school, I didn't have any sight at all. So what I have now is very limited light perception. Today, on a rainy, cloudy day, just foggy, I have very, very, very little light perception. On a sunny, clear day, I will have more, but no usable vision.
Okay. So really no shapes or objects, just some sense of light.
Right, right.
Okay. So that would be almost like a near complete blindness.
Absolutely, 100%. Definitely is. Yes.
So that is, and again, I think what struck me in your story was the tenderness of the years through which you went through with that.
Yes.
What was your support system during that time? What did that look like?
So that was the absolute gift. And that's the only reason you and I are sitting here having this conversation today. And I mean that very, very, very literal. So in those high school years, as I went through this grief process of losing my sight, the grief was so overwhelming. The anxiety was deep and manifested in constant panic attacks. The depression was incredibly severe. I was saying, I can't, I can't, I can't, I can't. I share all that to say is that was my mental state. The gift was my support system.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't say it through their words, but they said through their actions, we believe in you.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to give you 2 examples that
Mm-hmm.
specifically how my parents taught me this and modeled, you're so you and you can keep going. We just need to make accommodations.
Mm-hmm.
And they did that in 2 very specific ways. One major way was as I was literally living in panic attacks and just so extremely depressed, they would just remind me every day, Laura, all we have to do is focus on today. And within today, all we need to focus on is this hour.
Mm-hmm.
So you getting up, focusing on getting breakfast, getting to school on time, that's accomplishment for the day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all we need to focus on. We don't have to figure out your whole life plan
Mm-hmm.
as a sophomore in high school, right?
Right.
So when I was literally being mentally shut down by the future, they were instilling in me, be in the present, literally live moment by moment.
Mm-hmm.
So that was an incredible gift. The other major gift that I really want to share this story because it perfectly illustrates the support system around me. So towards the end of high school, I thought in my brilliant, I guess by now, like 17-year-old mind, oh, I'm just going to use blindness as an excuse to get up everything I don't want to do in life.
Okay.
I thought as a teenager, that's a great idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
Use your resources. I can't see. If I don't want to do something, I'm going to say I can't do it because I can't see. So one night, my mom said, Laura, I need you to unload the dishwasher. So again, in my mind, I had this all planned out. And I said, oh, Mom, of course, very dramatically, as a teenage girl's perfect at. I said, oh, Mom, there is no way I can unload the dishwasher. I'm going blind. Like she had no clue, right?
Right. First time she heard it.
First time she heard it, I was going to be one to tell her, right? But I'm going blind. So I can't put the silverware in the silverware drawer. And she is now, then was an elementary school teacher. So I said that to you understand her voice. She turned around, she looked at me and she said, Laura, unload the dishwasher. And then she walked out of the kitchen. And I also want to remind you, I was raised in South Carolina. So when your mom says that, you don't ask questions.
I'm surprised she didn't put you in the corner.
We was going there if I'd said anything else. And if as this whole interaction is happening, my dad is in the den and he's not jumping up and coming to my rescue. He's not saving the day. And I literally said and thought, well, y'all are the meanest parents in the world. Like, Dad, you're not going to my rescue. And Mom, you're not hitting me. You're making me unload the dishwasher. Like, how cruel can you be?
Right.
So, of course, with anger, I unloaded the dishwasher. The reason I share that story and why I remember it 30 years later is because what they were teaching me is if my mom had said, you're right, don't unload the dishwasher. My dad had jumped up and said, oh, honey, you're right. Let me unload the dishwasher for you. That would have taught me, oh, I can grab everything I don't want to do with the bluntness.
Yeah.
Them saying unload the dishwasher, end of story,
Right.
taught me through their actions, you're still worthy. We still believe in you. We're still holding you to the same expectations, the same standards. You just need accommodations made. So that's what I mean about is I didn't believe in myself. Others were believing in.
Nice. You describe a perfect scene that in the psychological literature that's called the Karpman triangle, where your mom was technically the persecutor, your father was the rescuer, and you were the victim. And so it's this triangle of dysfunctional communication that people get stuck on. And the only way out of that situation is to get off the triangle, which your mother did. So without even knowing it, she just blew that whole concept right up. And there you were standing. You could not be a victim.
Couldn't be a victim.
Nope.
And that was her whole goal, right?
Yeah.
And my dad's goal too.
Right. And so your dad was just going to rescue you, and then you were just going to, play the victim. And your mom stepped off the triangle and stopped that dysfunction. So that's just a beautiful story.
Now, I want to make it clear. As you described that triangle, that was the triangle in my head.
Uh-huh.
Like I knew good and well there was no rescuing from him. Like he was gonna instill confidence and belief in me. It was in my head. I had said, "Oh, this is how this story is gonna go. I'm gonna play victim. I'm gonna say I can't unload. Mom, if she lets me off, great. If she doesn't, I'll just use Dad as my backup to come rescue me." And none of them followed my plan.
Yep, they did not. They were smarter. And they knew that, just as their parenting skill to not stay what we would say on the triangle. So that's
On
just
the
a
triangle.
beautiful story. Beautiful story. So then what happened after high school? Because I'm assuming if you're fearless, you go through this huge life-changing disruption that's permanent. The mindset, the challenges, the grief. Brene Brown talks about anguish as one level of grief that's beyond, grief.
Yes.
It's where your legs buckle from underneath you, your bones crush, the wind's knocked out of you, and those feelings are more deeply than just saying, well, I'm sad or,
Yeah. And that's where I was living. Yes,
yeah,
100%.
yeah. And, it's an appropriate emotion. It's an appropriate feeling.
Yes.
It's an appropriate and valid experience that
Yeah.
way. But as so then how did you find your sense then of getting your legs back underneath you?
Once I had that support around me, that support of parents, of brother, of friends, of community, that then gave me the legs underneath me to say, okay, self, I've received this great, incredible support. Now, how am I going to respond to it?
Mm-hmm.
I have a choice. And going back to that model you talked about, I can continue trying to be victim and trying to scream like, "Would you please just pity me?" Like,
Mm-hmm.
I can try to like force myself to stay in that victim, or I can choose to take that support and continue forward
Mm-hmm.
and regain and rebuild my confidence and just self love and self compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because of the support I've received, that empowered me to regain those legs under me and
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, this is really, 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 really hard in a sense, in a state of anguish. And I choose to rebuild.
Mm-hmm. So some of the practices of that, I imagine, were things like Braille, machines, other tools that came in to your life, which is like a new language.
Yes, a
And
100%.
yeah, describe what that was like and what, I mean, because one of the words that keeps coming up in your document here too is grit. And grit is an inward facing strength versus grind that is an outward facing emotion and outward facing task.
Right.
But I would imagine that sometimes those words got flipped around.
Yes. So the way that I define grit is I love, love, love Dr. Angela Duckworth's work.
Okay.
And she talks about grit as yes, we have those long term goals, but within those long term goals, we have small, manageable daily goals.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I learned for myself is yes, my end goal is learning how to live life as a person without sight in a sighted world.
Mm-hmm.
That's the absolute end goal. But the day to day grit I need is choosing to experience the hard and then still move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And a very practical, what I mean by that practical example, as you're talking about, yes, there are so many tools and adaptations you have to use. In between the few months in between high school and college, I got my first guide dog.
Mm.
And I very vividly remember the afternoon that I was going to receive the guide dog, that I'd be introduced to her. I remember just sitting on the bed in San Francisco, 300 hello, 3,000 miles away from home, and thinking, okay, I've received incredible support. I've made the decision to come here to get this guide dog. Now it's time for me to live into that grit every single day. And as we literally physically move forward as a team, to also emotionally move forward. So
Mm-hmm.
the way that I define grit is acknowledging the hard and then choosing to still move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, thank you for saying that. I love how you explain the grind. It's not the grind of just push on, move on, suck it up, get over it,
Mm-hmm.
deal with it, right?
Right.
It's that, what you said perfectly, the internal grit of acknowledging I'm still incredibly anxious
Mm-hmm.
and I choose to focus on today.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other word that you use very commonly in all your sentences is I choose.
Yes. Yes.
And, when a patient looks at any type of chronic illness, no matter what it is, as devastating as losing your sight or as common as hypertension or diabetes,
Right.
or you still have a choice as a patient as to how you're going to engage, how you're going to face that, how you're going to find tools, support, and help to gain, regain, restore, strengthen, and allow the body to heal.
1000%.
And even in the face of losing sight, there's a healing that can occur. Do you think
Yes.
that that's possible?
Absolutely. And because I say absolutely, because that was my lived experience.
Yeah.
And what I want to make very, very clear is not like a magical, clearly, I haven't regained my sight. It's not like a
Right.
magical physical healing. And it's also not some magical emotional healing of I never experienced the grief, the anxiety, the depression, the sadness, the anger again.
Right.
The healing is the choice.
Yes.
Every single day, I choose the grit. I choose the gratitude. I choose to acknowledge the deep anxiety and then still choose to move forward.
Yeah.
So healing is not some magical process.
Mm-hmm.
It's something we choose every day.
Yes. And there are some patients that I've sat with that their healing came, unlike yours, in the midst of your circumstances. Theirs came when they actually departed this world,
Yeah. 1,000%.
which
Thousand
yeah,
percent.
an ultimate healing, right? At some level, if we're talking issues or leaning into the soul and the spirit
Yes.
and things like that. And I think that that's just really important because grief, we assume rightfully and a little bit misaligned way that grief is always about loss. It is loss, but the primary definition of grief is change. It's the primary definition. Something has changed.
And
And
that perfectly sums up my experience because, yes, I was losing my vision, but the grief was the change,
mhm,
right? Like adapting and adjusting to the incredible change. Yes, that change was started by vision loss,
mhm,
yet the change was equally as valid and hard and traumatic.
yes. And that can be too the grief of what could be, what was supposed to be,
So
what and without being unkind or disrespectful, the vision of your future, right?
1,000%. Yeah, especially a real world example. As I'm a teenager, I'm losing my sight as my friends are getting their driver's license. That was a huge change. I had to agree that that'll never be in my reality.
Yeah. So this might be a little bit of a tough question, and if you don't want to answer it, say no thank you.
I'm
It's
ready.
totally
Go for it.
fine. Did people bully you?
It was not bullying, it was isolation.
Ah.
Let me explain what I mean that. It was not, well, okay, I think of bullying as like a direct
Mm-hmm.
attack. It 100% was not that.
Mm-hmm.
What it was people just ignoring my presence, my existence.
Yeah.
That was the difficulty.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that goes with the adage of out of sight, out of mind. But that was a
Literally.
more reverse, wasn't it? Yeah.
Right. 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 It was like we don't know how to talk to you, and so we're just going to act like you don't exist. I mean, I can't tell you how many conversations I've been in, let's say with 4 people, and it's a three-way conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. So after high school, you've got they say your world is your oyster. Your world was a different oyster,
Right.
what you were born into. And the
Right.
grit, and you remember, grit inside of an oyster gives you what? A pearl,
Pearl.
right? That's
Yes.
how pearls come. So, what was the gift going into young adulthood that you found in going through your circumstances?
Learning deep self-love and self-compassion.
Okay. That one gave me goosebumps. Well done. Those are not easy lessons. And to
Those are
think that,
not easy. And I can definitely expand on each of those
yeah.
because, and again, this goes back, that perfectly goes with your question of, did you experience bullying? And no, it was that I don't know if you call it interaction because it wasn't interaction, but that experience of feeling that I'm invisible.
Hmm.
Again, it goes back to choice.
Hmm.
I had to learn self love because I had the choice. Was I going to say, okay, since other people, not everyone by any means, but because some people are treating me as invisible, is that my worth?
Mm-hmm.
Am I invisible to this world? Is my purpose invisible? Maybe that's how I should love myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had to make the choice to say, in that, in the people that support me, in the people that treat me invisible, in all of it, I choose to love and value myself.
Mm-hmm.
And what goes perfectly with that, and what I mean by that self love, is the self compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so hard because, like most of us, I'm my worst critic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so judgy. I'm quick to give other people compliments, but not myself.
Right.
What had the shift for me and what I had to learn is offering, like, what would I say to my very best friend? What would I say just about her well-being, her just sense of who she was, her meaning, her purpose in the world, when she's having good times, she's having bad times, in all of it, I would support her.
Mm-hmm.
Once I learned to offer that support, that compassion to myself, it was a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I realized self-love.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing because people spend their entire life trying to learn that.
Yes.
And the fact that you learned that as an early young woman is pretty doggone amazing, given all the circumstances you were literally facing.
Yes. Yes.
So then you went off into independence, right? Living on your own, doing your thing, and finding your way.
Yes.
What was that like for you?
Again, it was turning towards that grit.
Yeah,
And again, what I mean by that, not this air of like, I can do anything in the world, like
right,
not this like Pollyanna, it's all going to be great. But that day to day, what do I need for today?
right.
Okay, I've moved to a new place. Literally, who is reaching out to people I knew saying, hey, do you know a therapist in the area I can connect with?
Mhm.
Just all those logistic, taking care of my mind, body, spirit.
Mhm.
That is 100% the key. I can't emphasize that enough, and the importance that has been in my life for the healing is just always making that mind, body, spirit connection part of my lifestyle, not something I do every once in a while, or a 6-week cleanse, or
Right,
I want to focus on gratitude for 6 weeks, but constantly having routines that care for my mind, body, spirit healing just throughout my life, throughout the good, the bad, all of it.
right. And then you talk about gratitude as a source of strength. Leaning back into some of Brene Brown's work again, gratitude comes from a place of open-heartedness and also of things being kind of in a sense of, in a good way. Um, but I think gratitude could be, in addition to that, can be a tool to dig us out of some places that aren't so good. So, what was your experience with gratitude and how did that work for you?
100%. And I love, love, love how you said it, a tool to get us out of the difficult places.
Yeah,
That's where I am now. Let me explain to you just to give context.
yeah,
I want to make it very clear. I didn't wake up one day and say, oh, this is going to be a tool to help me move forward, right?
right,
Like,
right.
I did not view gratitude that way. I viewed gratitude as a way to cover up our real emotions.
Mm,
Oh, just be grateful and be positive and be thankful for everything.
mm-hmm,
And somehow just all your other emotions will magically go away.
mm, mm,
And it was one conversation with a mentor that changed that perspective.
mm-hmm,
So a mentor said to me, Laura, I want you to start writing down 3 things every day that you're grateful for. And I want you to do it at the end of your day so that you're very specific to reflect back on that day. So that it's 3 things: people, events from that day so that you're not repeating.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in my head, I'm thinking, lady, you're not a good mentor. But remember, I'm from South Carolina, so I don't say that out loud. I smile and nod. But I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna prove her wrong. I'm gonna be her mentor, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
because I'm thinking, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I'm losing my sight. Are you kidding me? There's nothing to be grateful for. And my goal was to hand her a blank sheet of paper.
Mm-hmm.
The one day became 3 days. The 3 days became a week. A week became a month. And what I realized was what she meant by gratitude.
Yeah.
And let me give you a very practical example. She was not teaching me to be grateful for anything and everything to cover up my other emotions. She wasn't using it as a band aid.
Mm-hmm.
She was teaching me gratitude as what you perfectly said, a tool to get us out and to move us forward. So
Mm-hmm.
she was not teaching me wake up and say, I'm grateful for the blindness. She was teaching me to wake up and say, I'm grateful for this guide dog that helps me navigate the world.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a tool to help us navigate through the difficulty, not cover up the difficulty, I can't talk, the reality of our difficult situation. So I want to make that distinction very,
Yeah.
very clear. It's not gratitude, like
Yeah.
to talk. I can't talk. Toxic positivity, right? But it's a resource.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because you describe also too another thing of external locus of control or internal locus of control. And the external locus of control can be things that are told to us, rules, regulations, legalism, standards put upon us that we apply ourselves to. Instead, using having the definitions of all the things you are facing, or taking the guide dog, using it as a tool to navigate your day and saying, I'm going to figure this out. And so that becomes an internal thing because you're making that decision and you are once again, in the driver's seat saying, I'm going to go forward with this. I'm making a choice.
Right.
Yeah.
Big difference. Thank you for explaining that because
Yeah,
it's complete difference, right?
it is. So, and the fact that, you know, the fact that you understood that, and I'm sure, and like all of us, no matter what we're facing, we have days and times that we want to not face those things,
Yes.
right? Um,
Right.
but the fact that in the literally in the face
Yes.
of the circumstances, you said, I'm going to choose to go forward.
Yes.
That's vulnerability and courage, which is one of the, it's a huge, huge, I don't even think it's a gift. I think it's a medal. I think you earned that one.
Thank you.
That wasn't gifted to you.
No, that was, and I'm not saying this, I mean this deeply. I'm not just saying this as a cliche. That was my choice.
Right.
I had to choose vulnerability and choose courage and still do every single day.
Yes.
It's not a one time decision.
Yeah. So that is just, I mean, in and of itself, no matter what, that is one of the most inspiring things. Um, to hear from you and how you really took all those tools, even, you know, and it kind of chuckles about, I wonder what you would be like if you lived in the North with us up here. Or the Midwest, where we're very kind, but we sometimes then just don't do what you ask us to do. That's another way. But I'm not saying that that's me. I'm saying I've heard that being done.
That is awesome. No, it's yeah, no, I totally agree. I'm like, gosh, if I was raised in the Northeast, it'd just be easier to be more direct, right?
Yeah.
And I probably would have just said, no, lady.
Right, right. It would have been a bit of a knockdown drag out. It would have.
There would have been some cussing involved.
Yeah, yeah, that's all right. There's a study that was published that people who cuss are actually more intelligent. So I'm pretty smart, but I won't use those other words.
Mom, that
You can.
can I text my mom and tell her that? Because she's, even now, as I'm 41 and
Yeah,
she's 75, she's like, don't say that, young lady. I'm like, Mom, I'm 40 years old.
exactly. Yeah, it's really it's a true refereed article, journal, and study. So I quote it frequently with a variety of colorful words.
That's awesome. That is, I'm gonna tell her that on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I just say I'm really damn smart. That's all there is to
That is awesome.
So what would be, you really have a wonderful platform. On your website, it's a beautiful description of a lot of things you've done. Different places you've spoken, you've done a TED Talk, it looks like, and you've done a variety of things where you've become now a mentor to those. And I would dare say, and maybe I'm too bold in saying this, for those of us with or without this type of a change or disability in our life.
Yeah, in fact, I've never worked with someone who's losing their sight or who is blind.
Oh, fascinating.
100%. People just automatically assume that that's all I do.
Yeah.
But I actually, and again, that wasn't intentional. I didn't focus on that or not focus on that. It's just the people that I've worked with have been those non-death, that exactly what you were saying about the grief earlier, the non-death loss, that grief of change.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So as a mentor, I'm going to put you up on that soapbox now as a mentor. What advice would you have for others who are experiencing a significant amount of change in their life?
The first step would be to acknowledge the difficulty.
Hmm.
And the reason I say that is from my own lived experience. I wanted to jump to figure out how this was all going to work out. And that's where the fear, that's where the anxiety came from.
Hmm.
I didn't want to stop and truly acknowledge the pain of really what every day felt like. Once I did get to that point, then I was able to move forward without fear and with less anxiety. And likewise, so many people I've worked with, they come to me and the first conversation is, here's the problem. Now, what do I do about it to fix it?
Right.
They don't want to sit in the pain because the fear is the pain, feeling the sadness, the anger will swallow us and overwhelm us.
Right.
So I say all that to say, give yourself the space to feel what you're feeling, because going through a difficult change situation, for all of us are different emotions. Some
Hmm.
it's sadness, some it's anger, some it's just irritation. It's all different types of emotion. And giving us the space to acknowledge it is what it is, because the situation is really, really hard.
Hmm.
So that would be my advice, not to skip over that step, but to give yourself, again, that self-love of acknowledging what you're feeling. And those feelings are okay.
Hmm. That's really good. That's really good. And I think, one of the things we do is run from that because a traumatic event causes us to disconnect.
Yes, 100%. And the disconnection,
Yeah.
again, I say this from my own experience, the disconnection in the moment feels easier.
Yeah. And sometimes it's safe to do that because it gives us a safety. And anxiety, is asking us to find out why we don't feel safe and what we can
Right,
do about it.
right.
So that makes sense. And then the key is daring to lean back into where it's uncomfortable.
Right. Not staying in that disconnection forever,
Right.
but what you said, leaning back into the discomfort to feel it, not to stay there. Because a lot of people's reaction when I say, feel the pain, feel the sadness, feel the anger, they're like, oh, I can't because I'll never get out of it. And I'm like, just, if you don't believe it, that's okay. But trust me that I'm saying you will not stay there.
Yeah. It's interesting because when I try and help patients with that, or do help patients with that, I should say, I say just allow it to be in the room with you. It doesn't
Yes.
even have to be next to you.
Right.
You
Right.
can even ask it to stay in the corner.
Right. Literally
Yeah,
for this corner, the ceiling, right?
right. And just allow it to be and just have an acknowledgement of it. Because the safest place to be is connected to yourself. From
Right.
there, you can go anywhere,
Okay.
right?
Say that again.
The safest place to be is connected to yourself.
And that is true all the time and could not be more true when we experience difficulty and trauma.
That's right.
And so that's why I wanted you to say that over and over is
Right.
because we feel like the safest place to be is anywhere but ourselves.
Right. Yep. And
And
so,
so once we know, and again, I'm saying this because it circles back to when I said self-love and self-compassion. Once I realized it was safe to offer myself that love and that compassion, I felt more connected than I've ever felt.
right. That's exactly right.
So
Yeah.
thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
That was the mic drop moment of the connection.
That is. And then the follow-up tagline to that is being connected to yourself is the safest place to be, because from there you can go anywhere.
Wow. And again, I want to not add to that, but just
Yeah.
expand on that from my own experience. Going anywhere doesn't mean winning the lottery, getting everything you want. Going anywhere means having emotional and mental freedom.
That's right.
Or I want to say that's what it's felt like in my experience. It doesn't mean getting what I want material. It means going anywhere, having the freedom and the safety mentally and
Right.
emotionally.
Right. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for being a guest. Laura, it's been a pleasure to speak with you today and to be in conversation with you and to learn from you. And I'm sure our listeners will be very grateful to what you've guided us through today. And I just wish you every goodness on all the steps that you have in front of you. So
Thank you. And
thank
thank you for your deep words of wisdom and just creating this podcast for this platform.
Yes. Oh, you're welcome. And it's a pleasure to have you as a guest, and I'm so glad that we've been able to connect. Take good care.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today as you listen to the podcast and viewed it today with our guest, Laura Bratton. She definitely has a lot of insight for a woman who currently can't see. So it was an amazing conversation. I'm glad that you were here. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Rate and review because that always gives us a good boost, and share this with your friends who might need a bit of encouragement to know that they can do anything. Take good care. See you next time. That's a wrap for this episode of the Dr. Mary Louder podcast show. I hope you've heard something today that made you think, laugh, or say, well, now that was a plot twist I didn't expect. Just remember, your health journey is more than lab results and supplements. It's spirit, soul, and story, and sometimes a gadget or two you probably should have returned. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us wherever you listen to your podcasts. And please share our podcast with someone you love. If you didn't like the show, well, maybe don't tell anybody then. And if you want more soulful medicine, curious conversations, and tools that actually help, visit me anytime at drmarylouder.com. Until next time, stay kind and stay curious. Music today is provided by Mr. Dave Evans. He composed, played, and engineered this song specifically for our podcast, and it's called Soul Strings, an acoustic reflection of the healing path. Thanks, Dave. It's great music.